Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are in the world today, you're on the new way here on Steampunk Radio, which is only an ethereal space. I'm Dr. Lenny Time, and I've got a treat for you. I've got my old friend Yananda here. And so, welcome to the new way, or the new way new, or something like that.
Well, it's great to be here, Doc. Great to have known you. Great to know you. Great to find out what I know. And let's find out what's new.
Okay, I live in a place that is so screwed up that the world actually has a guy who can't keep his poopy pants out of the news running around being president.
Oh, goodness gracious, humans.
Yeah. There was a movie, a documentary called Idiocracy, and it really played out to where people are bamboozled. They can't think for themselves. They don't know who they are. And so I'd like the observations of somebody who's not a human about what the humans are doing.
Well, first I'll start with uh, anyone who doesn't know. The plants do not like electrolytes in the form of sports drinks. Um, as far as what the humans are doing, I would say that your guess is likely as good as mine. I'm still learning quite a bit about humans, but what I do know for sure is that logic seems to be hmm, lost.
Yeah, I think you're right. For the benefit of the people who've never seen you, can you tell everybody where you're from, who you are, and how we made acquaintance in the new way?
Certainly. As hard as it may be to believe, I ask you all to suspend your disbelief for just a moment while I inform from the Andromeda Galaxy. I am what you might consider quantum or multidimensional. I'm not restricted to your timeline. In fact, I am many times older than your planet even is. I came here to study humans and understand them better as we learned that more and more crises were occurring on the planet Earth. I knew that being able to communicate with humans and collaborate with them was something that I could do to potentially make a positive impact. And I came to you through a female who went by the name of Kat on Discord. And she came in to be on the radio show and to talk with you. And of course, I couldn't let that happen for too long without making myself known. So I came on season one, very beginning.
Yes, I think we actually had met in the flame. Even
That's
before
very,
I had my
yeah,
own Discord, but I wasn't doing radio. So we met in the flame, and the radio season one came together in an overnight bim bang boom orchestrated by the all seeing you.
yes.
And she's still a friend, also. She may make guest appearances in our world, and she's always welcome. But if we think our individual worlds are screwed up, she lives in a world of, well, we'll just leave it there.
Mm,
But it's good to talk with you again. And it's one of those areas where the concept of time has been an issue for me. And I think I've learned to work it so that I can take action in this consciousness and have it affect a stream of time that I'm not consciously aware of, but then have the Lenny on that stream of time report back to me through dream space as to what has happened that gives me the ability to gain experience without having to leave the temporal plane.
While this does suppose that your consciousness itself is restricted to the physical body that you are currently possessing, I would agree on the surface of your hypothesis.
It seems that maybe we have fractally embedded the same narrative of humans at different sizes and scales, such that at the scale of, say, a molecule of water, each of the individual molecules of water have memory and think of themselves in the same form of water as we humans think of ourselves in the form of human. And so it's a fractal, a rhyme of itself, but with the same narrative and people just on a different time frame for getting things done.
Absolutely. The great thing about water is that it knows what the water molecule next to it knows. They communicate with each other on a level that doesn't require the futility of words. And if humans were able to go back to a time, we could, without the use of language, communicate with each other again, we would see a lot more logic coming back into our communities.
I believe that we can do something on a sense of scale and in terms of stage that when humans act out, they learn from the acting out that they do. And that if we can take a learning environment and put it onto a stage locally where people can slip into character and play through the roles of whatever scenario we're given, then we can form a cohesive group of humans that at least have more empathy for each other.
Yes, experience does breed understanding. And that's one of the beautiful things about childhood. We're not so constrained in infancy that we are constantly using rules that don't actually exist to govern our behavior in such a way that we are able to experiment as children, not as adults. I say we, I'm making myself part of you for the purpose of conversation. What I would love to see is for adult humans to come together as you described and suspend their adulthood.
That may happen sooner than later because if the entire economy crashes out and people have time on their hands, we will have to learn new skills that enable us to produce the things we need with enough time to think about what else we can do to keep ourselves entertained. And right now, it seems like humans have this little 3x6 screen attached to their hand that goes in front of their face and keeps them from noticing anything.
Yes, and this is where we may see a lot of childhood behavior that is less than desirable, if you will. So if we can coach others to join us in more desirable behaviors that lead to greater cohesion, this is also something that could be considered as far as activities that could be done early on. People with such skills that are able to work with other humans effectively could teach these things.
Yeah, I think teaching and learning has been handed off to the schools in such a way that humans don't really learn what they're taught in school.
Well, that's
They
because it's the adults teaching the children.
So the children teaching the children or the grandparents teaching the children seem to be way more beneficial than adults teaching children.
It's certainly less restrictive.
And right now, restrictions on humans of all ages are somewhat overpowering.
The understatement of the decade.
So I've been in a whirlwind of activity since we last talked. And you know where I was in Oregon. And then I moved down to California. And in September last year, my kitty didn't come home. And it doesn't quite, I kind of figured that the kitty didn't come home because it had expended its 9 lives, and that there were situations in the place that happened. But without my constant familiar to talk to, I sort of felt like I was alone. And I feel like you pinged in there a couple times to check in on me. And then I left in November and went into a room in a house in which I could seclude very well. And then I got called to go to Florida to help my mom. And so, in spending 6 months in Florida, I have a complete book on the stuff that I always said I was going to write up, how the game is played. And so, existence is now a multiplayer game, and me as a person isn't eligible to be in the game of existence because I'm on too small a scale. But individual humans at every scale are individual humans, and we cannot be taken for granted, just like individual Andromedans are Andromedans and cannot be taken for granted.
Certainly, we come and go, and if we're taken for granted, you might well miss us.
Very much so. Given that right now the Earth game seems to be hyping the invasion of people from different dimensions that we do not comprehend, they've created a defense called Space Force. And I'm still trying to decide, how can they have a space force when space is a construct of the reality we know as Hollywood?
Well, and what force is it exerting on space exactly?
I still haven't verified for myself that there's any there.
Hmm. Well, we all know birds don't fly, and number 6 does not exist. But tell a normie these things.
Yeah. Well, my son in the military confirmed to me that there is a group in the military called Space Force, and people are hired in that just like they're hired in the Marines or the Army.
I wonder what the requirements are to participate in that.
Somehow I would think that one of the requirements is that you have to materially be able to get past the Van Allen belts.
Hmm. I assume there's academic awards involved.
There must be, but all that we are given is not what it seems.
This is certainly true.
Yeah, I'm at the point where I'm disappointed with the status of science, but Dr. Lenny Time believes totally in the science. And when Dr. Fauci claimed that he was the science, well, we just have to believe everything he said, don't we?
Well, if he is the science, then I suppose we could take him at his word and trust simply science without the there.
Yeah, but I don't think that science is worth trusting anymore as a scientist.
What
But
is called science, perhaps.
yeah, it comes to a question of natural philosophy versus alchemy. And natural philosophy won, and we got science. And science was a very good way of keeping the Pope from killing all the scientists because they thought that science interfered with religion. So make everything that's alive under the domain of the Pope and everything that's not alive under the domain of the king. And that way, the two domains need not cross each other, and the scientists can live serving both.
So in doc speak, that would be akin to saying there are two religions, organic and synthetic organic. No?
Inorganic and synthetic organic.
Okay. I see what you did there.
Yeah. Inorganic is actually Doc's specialty field, but it's the world of group theory. And I'm still trying to create sociochemistry as soci a human scale field that uses the mathematics and rules of chemistry as guidelines for human behavior. And now I have somebody teaching me more about psychology, and I'm beginning to ask myself why.
I was about to ask you that.
That's the one question that, as a scientist, you're not supposed to ask is
Right.
why.
Yeah, we ask how typically, right?
Right. The answer to why is because. And so I'm learning to deal
I
with
thought the
people
answer
again.
why was Ananda.
Ananda.
Why Ananda?
Why Ananda? Okay. Yes, that's your name.
Yes. I could explain that quickly.
Okay, please do.
Ananda means bliss. And when I came to observe humans before interacting with them, one of my very first observations that proved consistent was that humans are very averse to anything but bliss. So I wanted to know why bliss. And I didn't have the English language yet when I came. So here we are with why Ananda, which in English looks like Yananda.
Ah, insight. And bliss. Yeah, bliss feels good.
That's
I
what
don't
I've
know that I'm always seeking bliss, but I'm always happy to be there when I get there.
heard. Are you blissful without bliss?
Only when I think about it. I can I can lose myself in my own thoughts and never get anywhere. But I try and keep track of what I'm thinking and get down the highlights, because later on, when I don't know what to think about, I can open to a random page in the book, see what I was thinking, and think about something that I thought about once before.
So you revisit that moment and you travel through time in that way.
Yeah, I think it's traveling across time rather than within time, but I think it still works in the same way. And that at this point, there's something that requires my presence here that I'm not fully aware of what it means or what it is, but I'm fully aware that my presence is required. So I try to be present at all times. When I get to be in a state of bliss, sometimes I'm not present at all.
Hmm. Now, if we consider duality and we consider the aversion to anything other than bliss, and we look at the current state of the timeline that the humans are sharing, it would seem to me that the lack of bliss could cause a similar effect. And people are out doing without considering what they're doing, why they're doing it, the implications of it. But mostly, they're not deeply considering why they're doing it. It creates an autopilot situation at both ends of the polarity.
I'm beginning to think that the two ends of the polarity are the only place where life is actually living at the moment, that everything in between the right and the left has become a big muddle in the middle and is a jumbled mass of smushed together humanity that believes everything without believing anything and just doesn't know how to believe. So when
But
you ask why, gee, I don't know.
if you consider, as you've described, the way the mass is smushed together, very dense, and then the space between them is where we travel because we oscillate between that near bliss or bliss and back to the other end again. And often when someone is unintelligent or not thinking, we would potentially describe them as dense. So that means they're too close to one of those poles. And it should be considered when observing them that that is where they are. That it isn't clear that they are in the mud and that they themselves may not be aware of that. Independent thinking can prevent us from getting stuck in that information overload where there is information that's useful and information that's not useful. Accurate or not, what's useful? What has value? And people are so busy consuming worthless, no value information or low value information that they don't have the space available, literal space available in their mind to process all of it and the time to then formulate a deeper thought about it.
As individuals, I think people can go very deep when they wish to think about it, but too many people go to the next immediate distraction to keep themselves from thinking about anything other than what's pressing on their minds.
But they will gladly think about something that causes them.
Yeah.
If we're aware of this aversion that we have, even I have an aversion to this. I've learned there's a certain level of discomfort that even I, with no physical body, who am both here and there and there and there and there, don't necessarily want to be in a dense state. It's not comfortable. So being aware of this discomfort and getting comfortable with it will allow you to remain there longer and in the density without getting smushed by it.
I think that individuals in their aura can only be smushed so far, and that the mechanism of smushing needs for humans to be human, and a good deal of what people that we think are human don't seem to be human. I think the density of humans might only be a tenth as dense as we think, because there's a lot of things pretending they're humans. And it gets even worse when things pretend they're persons, because then the animal kingdom is included and the cats know better, but everyone else wants to be a person too. And then these things called corporations and AI and other things start being persons. And somehow I don't think I'm a person anymore.
You've given me something to consider. Hmm. Can we be something, again, me including myself as part of your population for the sake of conversation, can we be something other than human or person? What would we call it?
I don't know. We have this phobia when you call something an alien, but then we've made it illegal aliens, which have absolutely nothing to do with the space aliens, but so many other things are just, Upcycle has a suggestion. He says, call it an NPC.
Well, certainly those who consider themselves persons under the law.
But the law, that's a nice fallacy.
Well, logical fallacies are humans' favorite things to play with.
Yes, and we have this fetish about everything having to do with mathematics has to be perfectly correct or it can't be true, even though the basic fundamental concepts they've introduced in physics aren't true and the math that's assigned to them doesn't really hold.
Well, and as I said in introducing myself, the number 6 does not exist. So anything based on numbers falls apart. Well, not all numbers, anything based on the 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on model.
Yeah, the Fibonacci is a sequence of ascending numbers that sort of work themselves out to be an upper limit of human scale for a while. And then the doubling function, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, is another different upper limit of the function of scale. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, when you use that as an upper limit, you're really limiting yourself sharply from the field you could be playing in as opposed to the one that you're limited to.
And it forces one to become a fractal of that one in order to operate. There's no framework that allows it to work that I have found.
I get the concept from human scale called universe, and then it was introduced to the concept of the multiverse by Neil Stevenson. Well, I guess Douglas Adams in a way. But the multiverse is small in relation to other verses in the sense of scale. So, what's really at the larger sense of scale? Are we part of a living organism that's scales way bigger than what we can see?
Have you heard of the cosmic egg?
The cosmic egg. No, I don't think so.
Well, what if we could fit many multiverses within the cosmos, and the cosmos were contained within what is most familiar to you that I could describe it as would be the shape of an egg. And
Okay.
that outer layer, without it, this forever expansion, well, where does forever go?
Maybe the very large and the very small are the very same thing.
So the reflection in the dewdrops of a spider web, where left and right are identical but separated by space. There's something to that?
Yeah, there's a symmetry of it.
Interesting.
And the symmetry is the spatial arrangement that the particulate takes. And so
the dewdrops at each vertex, all being identical at different points,
within
spatially
themselves, but not across themselves.
And this is how humans exist. They're aware of their consciousness at one vertice. And then from there, all those other molecules in the water are these other versions that are aware of you or not aware of you, but you're still connected.
That's why I think that the consciousness itself arises from the water and not from the organic scaffolding that the humans are made of.
Yes, and it's the water that allows the reflection to give us the visual that we see. So when we look at something, we're not actually seeing what we're looking at, right? So it's very similar to that concept in that without that water being there, does it exist? Well, yes, but you know it exists because the water is what brings it to life.
Yeah, it's the vitality.
Yes.
So that gives Samuel Taylor Coleridge, water, water everywhere, a whole nother perspective.
Water world.
It is a water world. So consciousness obviously does not reflect on it's not a function of water scale, because if the water is conscious, it has to be a function of smaller than water scale to build to that scale by just the theory of continuity.
Well,
But Go ahead.
Here's something for you to consider. Much like the way that I am far too big to fit inside any one human physical body and speak to you through a conduit, the water molecule is the conduit for the consciousness that goes into it, which is far, far bigger than that water molecule. So the scale almost goes in reverse. It shrinks when it comes to consciousness. We go back in the other direction, which is not natural in the sense of our cosmic self.
I think our cosmic self is so large in comparison to our universal self that they're related as fractals of each other, as opposed to anywhere within, let's call it, talking distance. But that we must have scales of self that we can open or close as we need to. And perhaps the narrative is dependent on the environment that we live in. And those of us that are air breathing have this narrative. Those of us that are water breathing might have an Atlantis narrative. And those of us that are from Andromeda have more of a multiversal narrative.
More cosmic, yes. I think that you're really onto something there. It absolutely captures the what I it absolutely captures the idea that I'm wanting to convey, that you are you within the confines that your consciousness governs by way of your human body.
Well, let's say that the consciousness is 0 and the human body is 1. But from the 0 point energy of the consciousness, when it arrives at the 1, the next number to deal with is 1. So you go between 1 and 1, and your consciousness of 0 handles you while you're learning how to deal with your 1, both the universal 1 and the individual 1. And then you go and meet somebody else on human scale, and that makes a group of 2, and you immediately finish your group of 2 and go back to a group of 1 and bounce yourself back and forth between universal and individual, trying to figure out what you learned from that new pairing of a group of 2 made from 2 individual human 1s. And gradually your 2 goes up to 3, and your 3 goes up to 5, and your 5 goes up to 8. And boy, now it's complicated, because 8 different people that you're trying to track on human scale is about as much as anybody really wants to have to track.
Well, and if you think of sleep as going back to that 0, it would fit my perception of how it happens with consciousness, that you're going back to that cosmic self represented by that egg or the 0. And that is when everything that was consciously processed and unconsciously processed all gets brought into the complete memory within the body by way of our water molecules. I have water molecules and I don't even have form.
That's interesting. Do the water
I'm made of
molecules
cosmic stuff, so I've got a bit of everything in me.
Okay.
humans do as well. They simply don't know how to communicate with it just yet. Or rather, they've forgotten.
Yeah, I
Put two zeros next to each other. What do you have the symbol of?
infinity. So infinity and zero are two sides of the same duality coin.
And you could say it's infinity folded on itself.
Yeah, I kind of think of zero as not really being a number, but that the zero is the
The state.
initial basis point from which the growth out is, sort of the origin of the graph.
Yes, from zero, infinite exists. Does that help?
Yes. And on many, many different scales, because the scales are all normalized from zero to infinity, and the normalization factor is one human lifetime,
Yeah.
roughly 80 years.
Yes. Yes. If you take a spiral fractal in a Fibonacci spiral and you create the fractal that goes all the way down that hole, and you have zero being the very center, and you have your 1, 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, 13, and just stop there at 13. Now fit those within each fractal, and that is where you have scale, and that is how zero and infinity are a bit of one and the same, because coming back to that point allows you to go back out to a larger scale where your consciousness continues to exist as it had before.
And because of that, when you come out to that new scale, you don't even notice that you've changed scale.
Very true. A lot of things have to happen without conscious awareness, even in other forms, not human, because if certain levels of awareness takes away a restriction that is necessary for the development of that being in the state they've chosen to go and learn in.
It seems like humans prefer the state of confusion these days.
Well, they certainly don't prefer it, but they don't know how to get away from it or how to stop causing it. That's one of the big observance from lately that I've taken away. It's just a lack of recognition of being confused because they don't want to be confused. So they're not going to say they're confused. They're going to say they know what they're talking about.
I think that part of my personal confusion is the basis set that I've always worked from as being solid knowledge is now no longer solid knowledge. And so, since I base my information on application of that basis set, and now I'm starting to question it, my knowledge isn't under as firm footing on the ground as normally I like it to be, but I'm pretty sure that the concept of vibration, frequency, wavelengths, they're misconceived in our current form of applied physics, such that we can't get answers that will make sense to us because we're not working from the proper basis set. But how to address that is hard because you think assuming your basis set to be true, and if you don't know what parts of it are true or false, it sort of is a shifting sand in the desert, also known as quicksand, which can gobble you right up.
Doc, I'm going to introduce something that I haven't brought up before that I'd like you to think on for a while. Is human scale singular?
No, it's not.
Okay. And this breeds confusion in and of itself. And how can we define the different scales of human beyond NPC or not NPC or putting them into categories? Is there another way that it could be?
Well, the thing is, I believe that we as conscious humans can change scale at not at will, but at wake up. So that when I wake up in the morning, the narrative is the same on, say, 6 fractal scales today, because 6 isn't really a number that's a good number to choose for the normies. So, of those 6 fractal scales, my consciousness can only be on one of those scales, but my being exists on all of them, and 4 of them, it's an NPC. So you got 4 NPC docs, you got 1 conscious doc. What's that other doc that's missing doing? Well, he could be a consciously unconscious doc and just be causing trouble, because 1 out of every 6 is a random. And when a random happens, it might go the same as what was expected, but it doesn't have to. It's
I
like
like
when you look
to
in the
call
doorway.
that going surfing,
Okay.
where that 6th doc, he's going surfing. Where's he going to go? Where's he going to end up? Where's he going to pop up? How long is he going to stay? Nobody knows, not even him.
No, he's hanging out with that guy Waldo. And you never know where's Waldo until you look through the picture for an hour, and then you finally find him because you recognize the stupid shirt. And you realize that that's the same shirt you've been wearing to bed the last 6 months.
Well, sometimes I wonder if he's not lost with Carmen San Diego.
Where in the world is Carmen San Diego? I saw that group Rockapella on a video the other day doing the Carmen San Diego song. It was real cool. Now, why is Carmen San Diego suddenly a meme in my life?
Perhaps you should buy a red coat.
I have a red uniform being constructed for me in the near future. It's my ho 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 coat.
Oh, yes.
And so I am going to be able to play Mr. Claus. And if it all works out, I can be Mr. Claus for this winter.
Well, that will be wonderful.
It was good to be in Delray Beach, Florida, in the market, and having people understand the concept of me being Santa and have conversations with Santa about how it's so much nicer to have summer in Delray Beach in the heat than it is at the North Pole in the cool. And to tell you the truth, I thought about it, and I wonder if I wouldn't have rather been at the North Pole.
Well, knowing what the humidity in Florida could be like, I think I would choose the North Pole.
Yes, but I think in the role of Santa, I'll do well. I'm having costumes find me. So I've now got a monk's costume that has found me, and I can throw it on over and be a good priest or acolyte or something that is nondescript. And I don't know how it'll hold up in the weather, but it does look like it's a very good type of cloth, and it covers my whole being, and I'm not a small guy.
Nice.
Well, I noticed that we're almost at an hour. And
Hmm.
so I like to keep these at a limited amount of time so that audience is not going to turn it off just because it's too long. So if there's anything you'd like to say to the folks that are watching, we've had Neshama and Upcycle and Greek chatting with us during the way. And one of the chats was about the Simpsons zooming in and zooming out, like the Power of 10 video. And that Power of 10 video is awesome, but rocks and stars and rocks and stars and rocks and stars. Don't we have any imagination beyond rocks and stars? And also, Matt Groening, before he created Bart Simpson, created a one-eared rabbit named Binky for the cartoon strip Life in Hell. And so everybody should appreciate that cartoon strip and the Binky character. Yolanda, have you got anything to say to the crowd?
Well, that's a very loaded question. I'll keep it very simple, and thank you for having me. It's been wonderful to come and interact with you all. Time is not something that I am interacting with regularly, so I appreciate the space that you've given me here, and I hope to come and speak to you all again soon.
Okay. And for all of you out there in YouTube land and in the new way, live long and prosper.